first question is, how would you define retail banking 3.0, first of all? And then how it differs from previous phases, like what enhancement it has brought about?
Thank you very much. It's a very comprehensive question, so I'll try to kind of summarize it because otherwise we'll be here for the rest of the evening. I still remember being a child, that I would walk into a branch with a check signed by my father, and I don't know how many of the people in the room could resonate to that brass token that you would get when you actually walk into a branch. And you take the brass token, you go and sit, and then you were called with the brass token, and then it would be taken away, and then it would. And the basic favorite thing in a bank would be a piano pen stick together with red and the blue with the rubber band. And if you look at that era, the bank would define what a customer needs were. So that was the era when the banking 2.0, so from leaving your animal to a trusted person who was a banker, that was banking 1.0, to the banking who was driving the lifestyle, that was 2.0, that yes, potentially that, so give you an analogy that possibly a person may require a car but does not have a financial requirement. So I am going to decide that how much you're going to pay as an installment, and then the product would be driven. So that's 2.0. The 3.0 is when you say that, and this is my view, and it could be absolutely wrong, the banking becomes lifestyle. So now people don't talk about the bank, because my father would say, oh, by the way, I had a bank account in bank X, and so as the son would have it, and so as the grandson would have it. Now, the next generation, it is defined by a lifestyle. So I don't want to go to a bank for my needs, but I want somebody to fulfill my need. So I want a car, but I'm not to be worried about a car loan. I want a house, but I don't want to be worried about a house loan. I want that while I am thinking, some of you may resonate to it, I'm on a holiday, I'm running out of a cash, the bank should decide that, oh, by the way, should I extend his credit limit on the card?
तो इसमें फैसल भाई, we should put forward कि इस तरह हो कि बैंक मेरे पास आए, rather than I should be
going to the bank. So that is how the transition moved on. And hence now going back to where I picked up to your conversation, that I said intelligence was there, because somewhat we were doing intelligently from a trust to a product. So we brought in artificial, and we said that now AI would personalize banking, looking into the data set and the activities that are being done by a customer from a day-to-day routine life. I would now reach out in a reverse order before even a customer comes back to me. So this is how, in my humble opinion, this is how the banking 3.0 has moved on, and this is how where the technology moved. So from a general ledger, from a Parchi to a Khata, which was that big a journal, to a core banking, to a hyper-personalized lifestyle banking. This is how I would see banking transforming.
Zahid bhai, if you can pour some thoughts.
Very comprehensive reply by Faisal साहब. इन्होंने दरिया को कूजे में बंद कर दिया हुआ है. I'm looking at a lot of the young faces around who would not have seen the retail banking 1.0. I went to the school in 1973-74, and my first account was opened as a school saving account at that time, and that was a non-checking account. And I was so fascinated becoming an account holder at the age of 5 or 6 years. And the bank issued me the passbook, and that was only for the credit entries. आप पैसे निकाल नहीं सकते थे. And इसी बहाने कभी कभार मैंने बैंक में जाया करना. That was the era जब 5 nationalized banks थे, private banking अभी आई नहीं थी. And then after completing my education, I joined the bank, and उसके बाद कुछ अर्से के बाद 2.0 आया. What was the difference between 1.0 and 2.0? 1.0 was a purely person-to-person interaction, and primarily depending upon the nature of the branch manager and the staff. And the people used to have very good hello hi with the branch manager to get their things done. And what was the list of things done? Cash deposit, cash withdrawal, bank draft, and utility bill collection. Very few branches had the luxury of लॉकर्स एंड दैट्स ऑल. लैंडिंग का तो कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं था कि किसी को इंडस्ट्रियल लोन होते होंगे, बट रिटेल लेवल पे देयर वाज नो कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ लैंडिंग, देयर वाज नो कंज्यूमर बैंकिंग, देयर वाज नो एग्रीकल्चर लैंडिंग, कुछ भी नहीं था. देन केम 2.0 which brought in the modern banking, mechanization, core banking systems, and coupled with the consumer banking. Thanks to foreign banks who came in and they introduced the consumer facilities, और फिर अब ये जो loan की facility थी, that started reaching to the common person. So one could think of in 90s कि यार मेरे पास या 2000 में कि I should have a credit card in my pocket. Initially, credit card luxury was limited to KLI, Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad, because one foreign bank was giving that, and when the local banks came in, it reached to the divisional and the district headquarters. Then came the other consumer facilities like car finance, personal loan, mortgages, home loans, and all that. But that was a revolution in the banking. And on the top of that, जब आप second decade of 2000s में आते हैं, तो there comes the digital banking. Now the bank is in the palm of your hand. You can operate your account. You need not to go to the branch. वहाँ से आप पैसे निकाल सकते हैं, जमा करा सकते हैं. You got the ATMs. आपको alternate channels आ गए कि you need not to go to the counters. Cash deposit machines arrived in the banking. You need not to go and deposit the cash with the bank. और ये digital channels ने आके 2.0 को enhance किया, coupled with consumer banking and digital banking. This was, and what was the difference between कि now this became the customer-centric. 1.0 was purely bank-centric. Many of you might not be knowing that you need to serve a 7 days prior notice to the branch manager for withdrawal of an amount exceeding 25,000 rupees. आज आपको 26,000 रुपये ज़रूरत पड़ गया, you need to give 7 days notice, और वो मैनेजर फिर बैक डेट्स में लेके he used to give the service. क्या होती थी कि बैक डेट में नोटिस उसने, but he has to arrange the cash and all that. And it was bank-centric because the customer was paid profit on the minimum balance maintained in the account during the month. You are maintaining an average balance of 100,000. एक दिन वो कहीं आपने निकाले 1,000 रुपये रह गया, you'll be getting the profit on 1,000 rupee minimum balance पे मिला करता था. So that was an exploitation because banking की facilities नहीं थी. There was no competition in the market. 92 में 10-12 private banks आ गए, and then some foreign banks और कुछ privatization and all that. Competition जब start हुआ तो कंज्यूमर और डिजिटल ने ला के ऑटोमेट किया चीज़ों को और फैसिलिटेट किया, एंड द बैंकिंग बिकेम द कस्टमर सेंट्रिक. प्रोडक्ट्स आनी स्टार्ट हुई, बट प्रोडक्ट्स क्या आती कि दैट वाज वन साइज फिट्स ऑल. मैं इसको ऐसे डिफाइन करूँगा कि दैट वाज एक स्मॉल मीडियम लार्ज पड़ा हुआ, यू हैव टू वेयर दैट, आपको पूरा आता है नहीं आता है, दैट्स इट. एंड द 3.0, एज फैसल साहब हैज सेड, दिस इज, you have given the title of hyper personalization. That's the top degree of personalization. Now this is a boutique who has to design, tailor, and make it fit for everybody in centimeters and millimeters. Aapko, you have to deliver the product which fits the size and requirements of the customer. जो new generation है हमारी, we have got mashallah a big chunk of our population is under 30s, and these people are tech savvy. सो अब एक रेवोल्यूशन है जिसमें, जैसे मैंने कहा कि इंटेलिजेंस तो पहले थी, अब जब आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस आई है, यू हैव गॉट लॉट ऑफ डेटा, सो दैट डेटा कैन बी एनालाइज्ड एंड यूटिलाइज्ड फॉर द बेनिफिट ऑफ द कस्टमर, टू मेक योर बैंक मोर competitive in the market, and to make yourself more customer centric and near to the requirements of the customer, so that he should choose you. Everybody has got 3-4 cards in the pocket. Everybody has got 2-3 accounts in the banks, and he has got applications, mobile applications. So he will only operate the account whose mobile app is most efficient, most accommodative. He can do anything. If he has to travel from Islamabad to Karachi, with push of a button, he can purchase the ticket. मेरा कल प्रोटोकॉल ऑफिसर वाज ऑन लीव सरकारी में, तो मैंने एक मीटिंग के दरमियान में दोनों टिकट ले लिए अपने मोबाइल से. इफ़ आई डिड नॉट हैड दैट फैसिलिटी, तो मुझे किसी ट्रैवल एजेंट को एंगेज करना पड़ता, किसी और को कहना पड़ता टू डिप्यूट समवन, वो हैसल का जो प्रोसेस था वो इन्होंने बैंक की उसने कर दिया. एंड देन बाई एनालाइजिंग द डेटा ऑफ द स्पेंडिंग ऑफ द कस्टमर, आप मुझे स्टॉप करेंगे तो फिर मैं आपको रुकूंगा, अदरवाइज आपका टाइम कंज्यूम हो जाएगा. एनालाइजिंग द डेटा ऑफ द यूजेज ऑफ द कस्टमर, बैंक कैन टेलर एंड सेल एंड पिच टू द कस्टमर व्हाट डज ही और शी नीड. मुझे एक बैंक का, मैं इसके साथ अभी क्लोज करूँगा, देन विल कम अगेन, इसको कंक्लूड करेंगे. माई बैंक नोज दैट आई एम अ फाइलर and the 30th June fiscal year has been closed. I got an interesting message from one of my banks that please entrust us this with the responsibility of filing your tax return. We'll take care of it. You know, this was the, I'm myself a business head, and this was beyond my thinking and imagination. They have gone miles ahead. By filing my return, they'll get the actual KYC, how much I'm earning, how much and where I'm spending, and by my spending habits, they can tailor products for me and make me the permanent customer of the bank.
Great, great. Rizwan bhai, from the technology perspective, how do you see retail banking 3.0? Banking की हमने version काफी सुन लिया. Like, how do you see the difference from the history?
अच्छा, I was expecting this कि आप कहेंगे technology के perspective से. Whereas I have a different perspective of this, even from a technology point of view. And I absolutely agree with what both Faisal and Zahid have said about it. The way I see it, retail banking 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, it's not about technology. It has never been about technology. कि जी technology है या 3.0 आज है इसलिए क्योंकि AI है. AI is just an enabler. Any technology throughout this time frame has always been an enabler. तो वो जो ब्रास के टोकन्स की आप बात कर रहे थे वो आई हैव यूज्ड इट, और मैं उसी पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से सोच रहा था कि देखें 1.0 वाज अबाउट व्हेन इट वाज ऑल अबाउट बैंक, एज सिंपल एज दैट आई वुड नीड टू बी इंट्रोड्यूस्ड बाय समबडी टू डू द बैंकिंग विद द बैंक. तो वो था 1.0 कि जी मुझे पहले कोई एक रेफरेंस चाहिए, somebody will introduce me, then the bank will look at it that whether they want me to do the banking with them or not. Versus 3.0 is about now the customers. Okay, the bank would like to be introduced to the customers. So versus KG, whether I am worthy of doing banking with the bank, to that the bank is worthy enough to do the banking or be the bank for the customer. And that is the major difference between the 1.0 and 3.0. And in between 2.0 was all about okay, how do we increase the reach, digital channels and all that. KG, हम omni channel experience कैसे कर लें और centralized कैसे कर दें. But 3.0 is all about that how the bank can live with their customers. Now living with the customer means understanding them, understanding their behavior, their pattern. जिस तरह से अभी आपने जो बात की कि जब वो आप फाइल करेंगे तो KYC की this is the best example that I am learning each and everything about it, and that's where the technology comes into play. That today versus maybe in the time of retail banking 1.0 and 2.0, technology was not advanced enough to provide some of those platforms जिनको leverage किया जा सके, जो आज हम कर सकते हैं. So it makes it simpler and easier. But 3.0 is all about us as people. जैसे मेरी throughout this maybe 2 decades or so, जब भी बैंकर से बात होती थी ना, वो अक्सर कई मरतबा कुछ बैंकर्स नाराज़ भी मेरे से इस बात पे होते थे. मैं कहता था कि यार देखें, when I speak to you, I think of myself that I am also a customer of your bank. So what do I expect? And it is very important to know. 1.0 was not about banks thinking that what do my customer expects from me. But today it's all about what my customer expects. And then how do I entertain the customer?
Sir, if you have like some other thoughts around जैसे रिजवान ने बोला कि the data is there, how can we leverage? Because I think if the bank is going after the customer, there are so many customers. So how AI and data are the main touch points here, and how can banks leverage and creating it a real 3.0?
So with respect to data, like Faisal Saab said, intelligence was there. Artificial got added to it recently. So I'll give you a couple of examples of, not from banking industry, but from FMCG and telecom, how this intelligence was there. So I come from an era where we used to gather data. We used to conduct surveys to collect data, to run behavioral segmentation models based on that collected data. And there were a couple of global products that at BAT and Telenor that were used to do advanced data mining to basically segment consumers beyond demographics and psychographics to something called emotion-based segmentation. So this whole revolution that was brought to the fore by the likes of Dalian Kahneman, the Nobel laureate, and Richard Thaler, the behavioral economist. So to understand the drivers of brand choice, they tapped into emotion-based segmentation. And I've presented this in some forum in Europe also, way back, that when BAT globally adopted this behavioral segmentation model, the tobacco industry was on decline. BAT volumes were flat. But courtesy of this segmentation, they ended up, out of the 7 global segments, they ended up targeting 4. And this is the story they shared with their investors. And their share price went up like a hockey stick. This is exactly the reason why Telenor poached me. Then we implemented the same model at Telenor, and we ended up repositioning the whole portfolio. TalkShock moved from song and dance to more family-based and relationship-focused. D-Juice, again, from that funky look to being rebellious, Khamoshi ka boycott and all that. And Telenor corporate brand was repositioned as Karo Mumkin, that telecoms are enabling that. So this is the data-based intelligence that we used to extract in the pre-digital era. Now I'll come to the digital era. I think the biggest revolution that I have been personally part of is the digital banking for the unbanked. So I've had the honor of launching Easy Paisa back in 2009. And then when I was poached by UBL, so we built the UBL Omni product in-house. We were backed by Gates Foundation. And mobile technology was the revolution, right? So we were able to onboard the customers in a semi-digital manner. They will still have to go to a retailer, do their biometric, and get these limited value accounts with certain transactions. And then they also had the option of upgrading it to a full KYC account. Part of that revolution was the G2P disbursement, the BASP, the SaaS program. And just when banks were revisiting their digital apps back in 2014-15, मुझे याद है उस वक्त the total industry downloads were not more than 2 million. This is total. Breeze was there, Alpha was launched, UBL and HB were thinking of revamping their app, and we had onboarded IBM at UBL. And we did the whole journey mapping, design thinking process. And today, I think there are 20 million, more than 20 million downloads. I'm just saying this based on recall. Don't hold me accountable for this number. And there are 50 million wallets. So I think this is still digital 1.5, hardly 2. As far as the hyper-personalization, behavioral segmentation, recommendation engines, for example, everyday basis पे हम hyper-personalization experience करते हैं. कहाँ पे? YouTube पे. आप जो चीज़ें YouTube पे देखते हैं, YouTube उससे similar content आपको recommend करता है. Same goes with Amazon. I'll give you an example of a very famous startup from US. 2013 I was attending a payment summer school by payments.com. It's a global payments think tank. We did 3 case studies. One of them was on this app called Level Up. It's become very big now in US. Towards the end of the case study, the 24 years old CEO shows up. And you know what they were doing back then in US? If you are a Level Up user and you previously had bought something from Nike store, and you're just passing by their store, based on your previous purchases data, they'll give you a real-time offer, RTOs. Another big example, again, this is pre-digital, semi-digital, before this big data and AI kind of became the buzz, is Starbucks. Starbucks today, the way they manage their customers, how well they understand the behavior, their average float that they have from customers is more than $2 billion. This is as of few years ago. बिकॉज स्टारबक्स क्या करता है, वो गेमिफाई कर दिया उन्होंने पूरा एक्सपीरियंस ऐप में. आप घर पे जाने से पहले अपना ऑर्डर प्लेस करें, बाय द टाइम यू रीच योर ऑर्डर इज रेडी and you are earning points against it and so on and so forth. The famous Target story, we know that story. So yeah, these are my thoughts on.
Faisal bhai, in terms of like we हमने बता दिया कि we have the data, we have the customer onboarded, we have its dynamics, but एक जो issue which I feel as a customer as well, and I think we all being CIOs and C-level executives face is the reactive versus predictive approach. So like with AI and all 3.0 banking information that we have, how can we be more proactive rather than being reactive to the needs? जैसे कि we have some of the examples के अगर filing का time आया हुआ है, so maybe the banking apps could push and leverage this data point as well.
It's a valid point, but मैं थोड़ा सा इसको rephrase करके then I'll explain my analogy. So I would not call it reactive or proactive. I would call it offensive and defensive. Because the analogy changes by all of it. Now, why I picked up the two words over reactive and proactive, there is a reason. So from a banking as an industry point of view, you can only categorize whatever you do in largely 2 or 3 buckets, which is offensive and defensive. So now offensive is something when you say that I will hyper personalize and I will reach out to a customer and I will get something done. So for example, I gave an example when I was earlier speaking, is that you are actually drip feeding the data into your systems and you realize the customer is a Karachi based customer, and or right now he or she is in Mauritius and the spend is there, and there is a historical data, empirical data of that customer with you, and you know the underlying reason the customer would not default, and you would allow the customer to bust the limit and say, okay, I will take and I will let him or her leverage the card for another extra, let's say, million or so. So that's a bit of an kind of an offensive. The banks will remain on the defensive side also, which is linking it to when you said reactive, is because there is a lot of work that goes around, lack of a better expression, around compliance. So a bank can never be out of these two states at a given point in time, because it's all about building a trust. So trust can only be built around two things. Number one, my money is safe. So that has to be there. Number two is that the bank in itself, in its own space, needs to be fully compliant. So when it is compliance, it is a defense. Now defense could be again bifurcated into two, which is defense to its own entity, which is compliance, and defense against fraudulent activities. So that part of the defense, which is the sub two categories under the defense, is once is compliance, the fraud would come under protecting the customer and building the trust. So if you know that a bank can predict and can safeguard my money using this information somewhat in an offensive along with a defensive mechanism, predict the likelihood for you to bank with that bank is far greater than any of the other banks in that space. Hyper-personalization and over-offensive, you have to be slightly careful with, because one thing, and every now and then when I do get an opportunity to speak, is that we do talk a lot about AI, predictive analysis, and so many other, but what we don't talk much about is governance structures. Because all the models which would eventually go and do these offensive ones or the proactive ones needs to be well governed. Now, what does govern entail into? Number one, the governance is that, okay, you need to make sure that the bank remains protected, the customer remains protected. The second part is because the models are normally self-learning, so over a period of time, the generic set of data that is accumulating into the model makes the model learn and makes it more intelligent. If you don't govern it, the model practically can lead to some anomaly which we refer it in the space of governance is called model biasness. So a hyper-personalized model can also lead, if not properly governed, into a very biased model, which means that if a model may eventually become very biased towards ethnicity, towards a belief, towards so many sectorial issues that may start getting cropping up. So these two, three things needs to go in tandem with each other. Unless otherwise fully covered, we have a bigger challenge to solve from.
To put it in a way, it's by design. It has to be a bit slow so that the negative aspect of adoption of technology doesn't creeps up.
So slowness is something somewhat we can
Not
take
in a
out
negative
now.
way.
So slowness is something that we can take out because now we do have models which can do a prediction or a forward-looking view on a very real-time basis. That's perfectly fine. But what I'm saying is that for such model, you need to do a model governance in a much more tighter environment, because the data set that is used to feed the model and make the model learn, because, okay, so let's take a very generic analogy. It resonates to a concept what is called a growth mindset. So a growth mindset fundamentally is a mindset where you learn things, you unlearn things, and you relearn things. It's in bad habits from the childhood that you tend to let go of every now and then, and you say, now I'll become a better person. So you actually inject and induce the new data set into the model to make the model more learned about things. So if you do not govern all of those aspects very well in time, your model may be out of place and the offensive may actually start working against the entity, because you want to have a very balanced view and approach. Last point on this is when you do create an offensive model, you need to draw a line as a very responsible corporate organization, how far you will actually, because practically if you look into it, the amount of data set that banks or any other or a telco would have, practically you can predict half the, or let's say 80% of the second move that you're going to make in your life. How far you want to go with that is something you need to draw, because the privacy of an individual is far more important than the other aspects of just the business growth. So that balance is also needs to be there.
Zahid bhai, what data points beyond the transaction history are like critical and can help deliver better products or offerings?
हमारे जो retail banking is, as said, is very competitive these days. There's a cutthroat competition between the banks because retail bank contributes to the major portion of their P&L. So every bank has got the focus. Variety of products has evolved in the market, from the deposit accounts to the consumer banking to the wealth products, everything. And in this competition, there is a race, the race of onboarding new to the bank and race of retaining the existing customer. Uski care bhi karni, and you have to onboard the new customer as well. And on the top of that, we having the geographical and geopolitical situation, we are under immense pressure of compliance because the agencies are watching Pakistan, this is being done and this is not being done. So that makes the task very complicated. The compliance, existing customer service and retention, and the onboarding. So here machines are there, the branches are there, the human resource is already there. What we can do right now is the constructive use of this AI, because this can help us in indicating new customer to whom we should contact and onboard, how to make our bank and the institution and the products attractive for the general public and the customers, and how to keep account of the existing customers, because in the brick and mortar there was a quality that the customer had to come to the branch और उसने अपनी नाराज़गी का इजहार करना था और निकल जाना था, and the manager had the chance to catch him and to recoup and the bridge the gap कि जी कोई मसला नहीं है, I'll take care of. The alternate channels and the digital channels, they have brought in so much blessings, and there's a curse for the branch managers, the man who is heading the business, that his business will drain out and through alternate channels he'll never know. So here comes the data analytics, the AI, from where he can see his list of customers, the top customers, the mid-tier customers, the small customers, because every segment contributes a lot to the business of the banks. So from there he can address to the complaints, he can improve his services and the products. Using that, we were analyzing a group of friends. A bank was developing a higher ratio of non-performing loans. And you know, in the micro and nano finance, this is a tendency that this is not unsecured lending. So this depends upon the mood of the borrower कि वो वापस करता है कि नहीं. So we just brought in the data of the industry, and by comparing the data, we come to know that the 25,000 of their customers, they were non-performing with that particular bank, and they had other portfolios in their ECIB, and they were regular in other banks. So the friends concluded, gentlemen, this is not fault with the customer. This is fault with your collection department. You are not approaching to the customer, or you are not hyperactive in going and telling them when is their due date and when they have to repay, and in case of non-payment, what would be the repercussions for the customer. So that data helped in indicating the internal weaknesses of the structure, because you had the industry set of data and you could analyze that. So there you can use that. The compliance, as I already said, that is the major function these days. This data that gives you the origin of the transaction, that gives you the origin of the person who is originating the transaction, that tells about the nature and the beneficiary. Just a simple example, my daughter was studying in UK, and I used to send her money from here. So वो account turnover लगा होता है कि she'll be getting this much pounds, and the origin was Pakistan. She had a plan to go to Europe. She needed the extra money. I sent, and that transaction stuck somewhere in the middle of. So since she had to leave, I told one of my friends in UK to send money to her. They had their hotel over there, उन्होंने लड़का भगाया और जाके CDM के ऊपर he deposited the pounds in the account of my daughter. The account was blocked. The account was blocked by the bank, and I told her you immediately approach the branch. Weekend was approaching, and मेरी बात करवा दो. So I introduced myself. I have this and this in the bank and all. And the manager told me, sir, she did not breach the turnover, but the origin of money changed. She used to get the money from Pakistan. She got the same money, but the money was for the first time deposited from within the UK. So that raised the bells, and I told him that, gentlemen, we have got this turnover exception report in the bank, and that is published every morning. If any account is breaching the turnover, we control it then and there, and we call it Ammar bhai, पैसे फालतू आ गए, क्या हुआ, कहाँ से आए, बड़े प्यार मोहब्बत से पता कर लेते हैं. And they had this artificial intelligence that was not only working on the digits and the numbers, that was working on the origin and other periphery of the money, from where the money is coming in. And the UK was not in the blacklist. Money was not coming from any blacklisted country. But there is so much sensitivity in the compliance segment that this data and this AI could be a blessing for the industry, and that can be utilized to fulfill the compliance function, the onboarding function, the retention function.
I think also the data points such as if you're logging in or not, maybe if you are paying the bill from the same app or not, maybe those can be the data points as well, which can be leveraged.
I'll enhance your point. The apps are now location enabled. You turn off the location of your mobile and you try to log in the app that says plus please first your, अगर आपका account कोई somebody is trying to use it from Africa, तो उसको नहीं करने देगा. So
I think they are very,
there is improvement. Controls are being built in. Yep.
The next question is like, how can the banks use AI without crossing into the creepy levels of personalization? Because हमने बड़ी बात की, उन्होंने बात की कि मैं नाइकी के पास से गुजरा तो वहाँ के ads आ गए. So what is the creepy level of it?
कि ऐसे ही कोई जनरल क्वेश्चन मेरे पे आएगा। देखें, it all goes back to
I kept it because आपका मतलब you have a diverse experience with Microsoft and everything.
बिल्कुल नहीं, and it's a very valid point you have raised कि and it goes back to, again, it's about the behavior. So it's not about technology. Technology, I still believe, has been there in one form and shape others, and it goes back to the last question you asked Faisal, and what he responded between reactive and proactive versus defensive and offensive. And again, even at that time, I was thinking applying to कि there was a time, because being a technologist throughout my life, एक वक्त था कि मुझे बहुत गुस्सा आता था, शायद जवान था इस वजह से भी, कि technology is there, why the banks are not adapting it. मैं आके बता रहा हूँ कि यार this is the way how it can be done and you can do this and you can do that, but they listen, they acknowledge, but they still don't follow. So I was used to get upset about it. But then I started learning and understanding the rationale behind it. अब मैं उसकी example आपको एक again, because I like to give personal examples in that we are daily life examples. आप note करें, if you have your phone near you like I have right now, and if I start talking about a location or about something, and then if you go to Instagram, Facebook and all these places, you start seeing the same ads popping up to you, right? So is this creepy? It is creepy, right? And that's the same thing कि मुझे ये लगा कि यार it is not about कि technology available नहीं है या बैंक ये कर नहीं सकता, but it is about bringing that balance कि where this whole thing will become creepy for the consumer, because I am, yes, irritated by Facebook or Instagram and their behavior, but because of the reason कि जी social और सारा कुछ use करते हैं, but I do at times कि मैं phone को mute पे करके या side पे कर देता हूँ when we are having certain discussions, because I know everything is being noted in that way. Same goes for कि जब आप creepy की बात करते हैं तो it is not about hyper personalization जो actual है या जो की जा सकती है, बात वो ये नहीं है कि okay I understand you and I know what you want, so just making that recommendation. It is about informing me that why did I make this recommendation to you? What did I learn about you? So the rationale behind it, that makes it not being creepy in that way. कि आप पहले तो first is consent. कि did you got the consent from me? That okay, yes, you can track my activities and understand who I am, understand my expense behavior, कि मैं क्या खर्च करता हूँ, ऐप अगर मोबाइल बैंकिंग यूज़ कर रहा हूँ या दूसरी चीज़ों से, जैसे बाहर अगर आप देखें तो बैंक्स जो हैं वो इस वक्त क्रॉस इंडस्ट्री कोलैबोरेशंस करते हैं, कि जैसे हम एक बैंक है HSBC की, आई थिंक इज कोलैबोरेशन विद वन ऑफ द health application also, so that they exchange the data between them, so they learn about their customers in that way कि जी how healthy they are, what is their routine and these things. अब वो चीज़ें जो हैं पहले तो मैंने consent दिया है, उसके बाद ये नहीं है कि एकदम से मेरे सामने पॉपअप होके बस आ गया कि जी अच्छा आप ये काम क्यों नहीं कर लेते, बट अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि why I'm making this recommendation to you would gain the trust. So I'll have the trust of the bank कि यार नहीं ठीक है, they have asked for the consent and they are telling me what they are tracking, and based on my own behavior they are making the recommendations about it. So that's how I feel it, and that's the reason I understand now कि जी वो offensive versus defensive जो है ना, it is again not about technology, it is about being responsible.
And also the compliance structure that comes with it, because there are certain regulations that you have to follow, like
Absolutely.
location example is there. So I get a lot of questions from my friends who are from abroad especially. They came in and they say, why do your apps, ask for the permission all the time of the location? Because they are very kind of finicky about it. So I also tell them that it's kind of a compliance requirement here in Pakistan, so you have to follow it. So we have to.
अच्छा, इसमें मैं एक point add करता हूँ. मैं अभी just 2 days back I was watching an interview about some AI guru, and but it was a very interesting thing because the discussion was around banking. उन्होंने कहा कि यार AI में जितनी एडवांसमेंट हो गई है, and in all the negative ways I would say AI is being used today, तो उन्होंने कहा कि the banks are still living in the old stone age era in that context, but that was the first time it really shocked me also that the banks are using voice authentication, facial authentication and all these mediums for the authentication of their consumers. And all these things, because of AI, are too easy to cheat and bypass. And so that expert was saying that, okay, the banks in that way believe that, okay, there is a certain technology which still exists today and is very good, whereas is actually is becoming more dangerous than the old way of that passwords and those things. Because it is still much more simpler and easier to secure in that way or not to bypass versus कि जी आज तो आपको पता है कि videos भी बन जाती हैं, pictures भी होती हैं. So there are things from a regulation and compliance point of view, internal even banks on regulation and compliance, which is important, and that's where being transparent to the customer is what will make it less creepy.
So based on your experiences with UBL and Easy Paisa, how can banks redesign customer journeys to match and ease like the relevance, and how can the tech brands become more customer centric?
So I'll touch upon on a bigger issue with Pakistani banks. So there were words like defensive, offensive, or so I want to add to that vocabulary. In the words of Nadeem Hussain, and he often says out on forums that Pakistani banks are piss drunk on T-bills. So it's not just an ability issue, it's also a matter of willingness. With so many banking apps around, tell me how many today onboard you for an asset side product, end-to-end digital. Forget AI. AI is 100,000 miles away. Have they digitized their processes enough in terms of a car loan, an auto loan, and a credit card? Or, for example, I moved to Middle East 2 years ago. I opened my salary account with Emirates NBD. Very next week, they sent me a credit card without me applying for it. You know? Or maybe when I was opening my account, I had given my consent, yes, I want a credit card. No KYC, nothing. On my salary account, they know how much this guy is earning, they send me a credit card. Every weekend there is some auto show from BMW or Audi and there is 0% offer for me. So banks, it's a willingness issue. हमारे banks कहाँ पे खड़े हैं आज? They are still busy fixing the core banking issues. Forget digital. They haven't digitized their processes. मतलब मेरा एक पाकिस्तान के एक बैंक में 15 साल से अकाउंट है. They should have analyzed my data for last 15 years. They should have offered me an auto loan. By now, they should have offered me a mortgage loan. They should know where I travel because I swipe the card, you know. Travel and tourism, you know. So, हमारे बैंक सो रहे हैं. और एक MIT का एक प्रोफेसर है जॉर्ज वेस्टमैन, वो कहते हैं दुनिया में 2 तरह के डिजिटल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन चैंपियंस हैं. एक वो जो कि एक्चुअल हीरोज हैं और एक फैशनिस्ट्स हैं. Digital has become a fashion in this country for bankers. Oh, gee, we have launched this app. This is the industry's best app. Nobody is looking at data. Nobody is looking at data. They are still busy fixing their process. And they hide under these guise of compliance. It's a willingness issue. They do not want to lend. The day they will be forced to lend, you know, they'll fix everything. AI will automatically be adopted. That's one. So I'm not saying this is across the board. There will be some exceptions to the rule. There are some disruptors out there. You know, there are some fintech apps, etc. But I'm generally talking about the mindset. It's a mindset issue with the bankers in this country.
I just want to add.
Sorry, I sounded like a critic. I wanted to wear that critic's hat and.
एक point में अगर ऐड कर दूँ. So I mean, I would not say I disagree with you in that way, but I'll give you again a real life example. So I travel almost out of 365 days, 250 days I travel. So I've been to every airport everywhere. ये वही चीज़ है जो आप बात कर रहे हैं कि कौन सा एयरपोर्ट आपने दुनिया में देखा है जहाँ पे आप चेक इन काउंटर तक अपनी फैमिली के साथ नहीं जा सकते या जहाँ पे सिक्योरिटी जो है. So it is not about, I would not look at it as banks, they don't want to digitize, they don't want to transform. It's about वो कहते हैं ना जैसा देश वैसा भेष. So it's because मैं भी कल भी ट्रैवल कर रहा था तो मैं ये सोच रहा था कि यार मेरी फैमिली आती है वो मलेशिया, सिंगापुर, US एयरपोर्ट पे आप अंदर तक जाते हैं, इवन चेक इन गेट को भी क्रॉस करके, तो मान लेते हैं कि जी banks are not there, they are not willing to. But why even our airports are not there? So it's not a matter of the willingness or the technology not being there or being fashionist, but it is more about कि हम किस environment में हैं, किस culture में हैं, वहाँ पे क्या चीज़ norm है. आज अगर आप airports को open छोड़ दें, तो it will become a park. That's
Also-
not the case, right?
Also,
So
like I would like to add the same point. It's all about the environment. We just came out of like FATF's grey list. It was a very all-round effort. Government, the bankers, and enforcement agencies. So maybe because of that, you might feel like the data is not being harnessed to that much. But like recently, I have experienced the apps being more persuasive. I get a pop-up, you haven't paid your bill. I get a pop-up, your credit card limit. Do you want to increase your credit card limit? Like it was a freshen experience for me. They didn't ask for any of the documentation. It knew from the transactions and it pushed me a notification. Do you want it? I said yes, and I got my limit increased.
So just to qualify it a little, reality is not black and white. There are shades of gray. So there are banks who might have taken some steps. They have ventured out into becoming more digital. But then there are banks who are not doing anything. And they're still making a lot of money.
Yes. For that also, I think, at least my experience, I will share, then obviously I will let others speak as well. The State Bank is pushing towards digitization through regulation as well. Like in-app notification, they have regulated, so like you don't have a choice there. And there are other initiatives. The sandbox has been offered as well. So I think Faisal, if you want to, maybe add in, हमने तो लड़ लिया काफी.
I was enjoying the conversation because kind of related party, as they say in the compliance world. I see Hussain Ali sahab sitting there also. देखिए, the point is, थोड़ा सा मैं मुस्तफ़ा से I would have my opinion slightly digressing. It's not about the willingness, it's largely about how we structured. So आपने refer किया मुस्तफ़ा about UAE market and all of those are very well structured, consumer protected, and जो आपके lenders हैं, they are well protected. So a lot of things that could. So I'll give you an example. आपने दो तीन चीज़ों को टच बेस किया, rightly so. If I see from a customer side, because I always talk about banking converting into lifestyle, but so do we have a centralized credit scoring mechanism available which will underwrite my risk? Unfortunately, the answer is no. So where do I underwrite my risk, and from where do I? So if you have taken, and not you, I mean, you're a big guy, so I'm sure you must have taken a couple of billions from here and there, but that's fine. But somebody like me, who might be over leveraged, so the only fundamental document at this point in time available is the ECIB. However, for me to do instant credit checks and make decision making, a centralized credit scoring system, and so that on which I can actually base my risk profiling, is a dire need as of today. Now, nobody can deny it at this point in time, but do I have it? The answer is no. So otherwise, what will happen is that every person would go to every other bank, and like it's been happening in the past when we were not as centralized as we are today, that people were over leveraged. That you go and you apply a credit card in one bank, then to another one, and to another one, and to another one, and there was no way to control your DBRs, and then you were over leveraged, and then there was write-offs, and then there were other issues standing. I would want it as far as that I take it, augmented reality, I go and take a picture of a car, and then all I get is the key of the car to drive home with. Yes, that may be at works, but there are, and I've been very vocal about these things. I've been on multiple forums, I've been part of working groups and so many others, that if we were to fundamentally leverage and get to that point, we need to go and address the core. Core is not about willingness. Core is about going and addressing how we structure the the whole ecosystem around it. So like I touched upon one part, which is a centralized credit risk scoring system to which all the banks would refer to. So if such things come into play, I think it would actually pave a lot of way for a lot of banks to make a lot of decision making, which would become much easier than where we are. So we are getting there. Is it the right pace? Yes, I would agree with you. The right pace might not be if we were supposed to be at 120 kilometers an hour, we might be snail pacing it by 20 kilometers per an hour. So that, and plus if you go to the other side, and I think that's a very good initiative by the government of Pakistan, where they're trying to push electronic money into the system, and so that when all of this circulation comes into play, then might be we be able to get to where you are saying. But that's my very humble opinion. Now back to you.
Thank you everyone. Just last one question, maybe a small thought on it. How will the retail banking 3.0 will look like in the future in Pakistan specifically? And like, can we see it in the next decade, the self-driving banking 3.0?
So if I can take this one, so my view is decade, I don't know, because I don't even know if I would be, but it's a bit too long of a period. But yes, I think it's going to leapfrog. It may not be called 3.0, it may be called 4.0, and it will be a bank in a box, if I phrase it, which means a large computer might be in one server room dipped in synthetic oil, because now as we move much greener, so the normal conventional even data centers are going away. And that computer actually doing anything and everything that you can wish for, and eventually brick and mortar would go away. The only problematic part, and I think this is where I would agree with Mustafa greatly, because a large set of our financial reliance in country is still cash based. So whether we will be able to see that transition in our lives is something I would look into. But in my opinion, it would be a bank in a box, and a bank and a branch it might be in a finger as a ring, and that's all you think and you pay. But sorry, just to conclude, one part that would actually greatly impact, and normally we don't talk about when we get into this spaces, is cybersecurity. So as we move much into that cycle, the banks and other financial institutions need to take cybersecurity far more vigilantly, diligently, because culturally still some part of the segment would still struggle investing into cybersecurity. Oh, by the way, why do I invest so heavily into this segment? आज तक तो कुछ हुआ नहीं, इंशाल्लाह आइंदा भी कुछ होगा नहीं. So that energy, inshallah, mashallah से थोड़ा सा निकल के, we need to get more realistic. So these two spaces, I think this is where we will see a lot more happening.
Zahid, your thoughts?
फैसल साहब की बात को इंट्रोड्यूस करूँगा. A little difference of opinion with Mustafa. There is difference between the markets. We have to see the environment in the market where the banks are operating. Change is the only constant. The banks have to change. जो change नहीं करेगा वो वहाँ पे नज़र नहीं आएगा. That will automatically eliminate. But you have to see the set of customers you are dealing with. आप यहाँ बैठ के हम रिटेल बैंकिंग 3.0, आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, डिजिटाइजेशन, इनकी बातें कर रहे हैं. इन द सेम कंट्री the banks are announcing the opening of branches on the Sundays. For what? Digital channels are there. Alternate delivery channels are there. Call centers are working. Mobiles are working. Apps. For what? For just handling the cash-based economy of the country. Because even digital transactions are multiplying, but even then the major portion of the economy in Pakistan is undocumented, unfortunately, and is the cash-based economy, and they'll not make it documented economy. So ISCO, the best practice banks have to do, and I take pride that my bank is mashallah leading in that area, the banks have to educate their customers. Until and unless we will not educate the population about the banking, its products and usage, it would be useless to innovate the hyper and the top edge products and the processes and facilities का benefit नहीं होगा. There are two programs running under the umbrella of State Bank of Pakistan. One is NFLP, National Financial Literacy Program, and the other is AFLP, Agriculture Financial Literacy Program. And that is being effectively done on the ground. The teams are going from village to village, from town to town, because that is the major part of your population. आप अपने आप को लाहौर, कराची और इस्लामाबाद तक करके नहीं रह सकते. ये बहुत छोटा segment है. In a population of over transgress कर जाएंगे 225 million people, we are only holding 2.5 million cards. And उनमें से unique customer निकालें, that would be less than 1 million people would be having the credit cards. तो हम तो वो बहुत एक different दुनिया में रह रहे हैं. The major population is the rural population and the middle and lower class living in the cities. You have to educate those people. They are the major population. They are the major users. वो educate होंगे. The banks would be bound to improve their services and the products, और change खुद से आएगी. And the faster would be the process of education, the faster would be the change.
Thank you. Rizwan bhai, your thoughts on like how 3.0 will look like in the next 10 years?
So, again, I would agree with both the gentlemen. First of all, I don't think so there will be a 3.0 in 1 decade from now, because 3.0 is already here. Whether we are adapting it or not is a different question, right? So, the rate of change today is very different from maybe a decade back, because of this whole thanks to Sam Altman, OpenAI, ChatGPT and everything, because now everybody has become a guru as well of these technologies in that way. So technology is very rapidly changing. So there may be 4.0, 5.0, but if you look at it from purely banking point of view, not from a technology point of view, because we don't know what the technology is going to be next. The banks are, as I said, it's about people, customers to bank becoming their customers in that way, or living with the people. So what I see is that it should be a more around advisory, financial inclusion, financial advisory, and these things. So the branches may still be there, because in Pakistan we love the branches and everybody wants to open the branches, but maybe the behavior of those branches will change. That instead of doing transactional based activities, it will more become around financial advisory, financial inclusion and all these things. But I'm very hopeful, inshallah, we are in the right path. So, and there's a lot of progress from last 1 decade or so. So I definitely see that retail banking 3.0 will be here, maybe not in 1 decade, shorter than that.
So your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I want to share a couple of case studies of how we have fared in the last 15 years. So branchless banking regulation in Pakistan was rolled out in 2008. Today we have 50 million wallets. They can do 3 things only: P2P, bill payments, and airtime top-up. Can they borrow? No. Can they pay digitally? No. Yes, there is an effort through RAST P2M now that people should be able to pay. Versus a similar country which launched their branchless banking regulation in 2014, 9 years after us. So hats off to SBP for being early in that space, but where they are today in terms of UPI. So the numbers are through the roof when you look at the data from UPI. So it's a similar country, right? अच्छा 3.0 ऑलरेडी हो भी चुका हुआ है और अभी मजीद 10 साल लगेंगे भी. कहाँ हो चुका हुआ है? There is a number being scrutinized by friends at State Bank that there are 40 million Pakistanis who are crypto investors. State Bank is debating that number. They have challenged those authorities. Lastly, banks Sunday को branches क्यों खोल रहे हैं? क्योंकि बैंक को मोहब्बत है डिपॉजिटर से. डिपॉजिटर का पैसा आएगा वो गवर्नमेंट को लेंड करेंगे. Lending नहीं करनी. SME lending, we haven't solved. Banking industry hasn't solved for SME lending. Banking industry hasn't solved for agri lending, for all that jazz. उसको वो परवाज करेगा, वो माइक्रो फाइनेंस कुछ करेगा, वो उसके लिए अभी फाइनेंस कुछ शायद कर दे. Banks are still in the comfort zone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was a very pleasant conversation and enlightening for me as well. Or that's all from me.